that's a harder one to, where's the?
It's just the silver button.
Oh, okay. Oh, so I have to change things.
Yeah, you're just, I know.
The synapses in the brain, you're making them work. Oh, God. Oh, but look at how beautiful that is. I like its green, too. Yeah, yeah, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
just want to use it on every slide. I'm going to find some reason.
It's awfully faint. Ready to go? Well, good morning, everyone. I am John Mann, Director of Education for Lakeside. And for our theme of the week, of course, is Local Food Sourcing Week. And we're fortunate to have Teresa Moran joining us today for 2 lectures. Teresa is an adjunct associate professor in plant biology at Ohio University and established the interdisciplinary food studies program at Ohio U in 2013. Her research focuses on the sustainability implications of food choices and institutional procurement as a driver of regional economic development. And this morning's presentation is ultra-processed food. Are we not really ultra-processed people? With apologies to Dr. Chris Van Tuliken. Teresa will explore how we got to the place where 60% or more of our calories come from ultra-processed foods, and will challenge us to learn more about what's is or isn't in our food. I do always ask if you'd please mute your cell phone ringers and help me in welcoming Teresa Moran.
Thank you, John. And if this is like a classroom, everyone's sitting at the back, just to say, I won't bite, but whatever and if you want to leave, please, we understand that don't feel any hesitation about leaving. I always say that in my classes too, and people get so embarrassed they don't leave. So we'll see what happens here. Anyway, as John said, my name's Teresa Moran, and it's quite an honor to be here with you today. And what I'm going to talk about is this. You may have heard it, it's all the rage in every magazine and TV and podcast, ultra-processed food and our health. And here we have the supermarket, and I just want to point out that what I'm showing here, just so I have a chance to use the super-powered pointer, we're talking about the middle aisles of the supermarket, in supermarket engineering and in design. The outside of the aisles of the supermarket is where you have the fresh and the frozen foods, and the inside is where you have these aisles of what is now ultra-processed food. So let's just first take a look at our agenda and what I'm going to talk today about. I'm going to give you a little brief introduction, and then I'm going to talk about SAD. SAD is the acronym for, it's an actual acronym for the Standard American Diet. And specifically, I'm going to ask a question of how did we get here with this SAD diet? And then we will go into what are ultra-processed foods. We'll look at actually some definitions so we know what we're talking about. And then we're going to go from there into what do we know about ultra-processed foods? What kind of research? And then is anything being done, quote unquote, done about ultra-processed foods? What don't we know? This is extremely important because the research on ultra-processed food is literally cutting edge. This is research within the past 10, 12 years, and most recently research within the past 5 to 7 years. So it's really research now. So what don't we know is a very big category. And then I'm going to conclude with some actions, some suggestions. What do we do going forward? And I am very happy to answer questions as we go along. I know it's difficult if you have a question at one slide to keep that throughout the entire presentation. So please don't hesitate. You can just raise up your hand, and John said that he has a mic or something. He comes around in case you are concerned about having your voice projecting. All right, so let's just go here. As John mentioned in the introduction, this talk and a lot of my research in this issue was inspired by a recent book by a professor and doctor at University College London. His name is Chris Van Tulleken, and if you put his name into any of your podcasts, tons of material will pop up because he's had a tremendous success with this book. It was #1 on the Financial Times, one of the books of the year for the New Yorker and the New York Times. And it's ultra-processed people, the science behind food that is in food. So we're going to be investigating that. And here are 2 recent articles, one from the New York Times and another one linking ultra-processed food and label warnings, which is a hot topic now. And I want to say how I personally began this investigation to ultra-processed food is that I started a food studies program at Ohio University. And food studies is an interdisciplinary academic program where there's an exploration in food across disciplines. For example, in history, literature, biology, linguistics, chemistry, environmental sciences, philosophy. In all these different academic disciplines, you can use food to get into the study of that discipline. For example, if you think about history and you're interested in food and you think, oh, history's so boring. But if you look about the history of food in World War I or in World War II, or, for example, our current crisis in Ukraine and the implications across the world for food due to that conflict. So that's what the interdiscipline study of food studies does. And in that capacity, I also began study away programs. So we had students go and look at food policy in Cuba. We had students go and examine sustainable agriculture in Ecuador. And then the program that I have that's continuing on is Food in Sicily, where students every year spend a month in Sicily examining the connections between culture and food. So this is a very popular, relatively new within the past 30 years as an academic discipline. New York University was the first university to start a PhD program in food studies. And this program, as you probably can imagine, became extremely popular with students and also with faculty. And that when you're studying food, you sort of start thinking about what you're eating yourself. And Ohio University, the main campus, is in Athens, Ohio. Anybody know Athens, Ohio? Yay, go Bobcats. I always say that, But Athens is the home of a fantastically vibrant food scene. And it's not just craft beer. I know the city has a reputation across the state for our extreme beer scene, but we also have an amazing food scene with a farmer's market that was voted best in the state of Ohio, and quite a number of small, diversified farms and small food producers. So in Athens, Athens County and the surrounding counties, you can have access, not really at Walmart prices, but at accessible for many prices of local, often organic milk. We have a fantastic dairy, eggs, meat, produce, fruit, and even beans and grains through a local mill. So we have this abundance of accessible food in Athens and Athens County. And yet I noticed, and really my students noticed, that that wasn't what they were eating. I mean, okay, it's college, but There's soda, and there's chicken nuggets, and there's ramen, and there's this predominance of prepared foods. Such a predominance that I started thinking about, well, what is the American diet? What is this sad diet? And discovered that recent research was uncovering a lot of deleterious effects in our current diet, and effects that we simply are not aware of. And so we think for a moment, the standard American diet now, 3 out of 4 Americans do not eat a single piece of fruit a day. 9 out of 10 Americans do not eat the minimum required intake of vegetables a day. Now that's 2 cups of vegetables, and the idea is you use the palm of your hand for each half-cup serving. 96% of Americans do not have the minimum requirement of leafy greens per week. So you're supposed to have a cup of leafy greens, they can be cooked as well, per day, but 96% of us don't. And we eat more than 600 calories every day of grain products and only 200 calories of vegetables and fruit. Well, the question, when you think about that, and when you look at the grocery carts, you think, well, how did we get here? And we're going to go a little bit down memory lane here. You may remember Senator George McGovern. Senator George McGovern, in 1977, he was in head of a special Senate Select Committee on Health. And this Senate Committee on Health was charged with investigating dietary guidelines for Americans because there was an increase in heart disease, stroke, and diabetes. But it was really mostly focused on heart disease at that point. And so in 1977, there was the McGovern Report on dietary guidelines. And the basic bottom line of that report is fat is bad. Fat is the enemy. And calories in, calories out for any type of weight loss or weight gain. Avoid sugar. And yet, with these dietary guidelines, heart disease rates continued to rise, as did diabetes. And so the question was, well, what else is going on? We're following these guidelines. You may all remember Snackwell cookies. Snackwell cookies, Snackwell food, Devil's Food sandwich cookies were the hottest selling cookies in the United States in the over 30 age category for years, and their predominant characteristic was fat-free. Well, people started investigating what could be going on in our food system because we're cutting out the fat. Everything we're eating is fat-free, and yet these rates of heart disease and diabetes continued. There was, of course, an awareness in changes in food processing. For example, the high fructose, the introduction to into the global food system of high fructose corn syrup. Now, high fructose corn syrup is simply a sweetener. It's a liquid sweetener from corn. And it was introduced in the 1970s globally. It has the same calories as sugar. We have to remember that. However, it's cheaper than sugar. We have to remember that sugar is mostly from what 2 vegetables? Or, yeah, sugar cane and beet sugar, yes. So corn is a lot cheaper. And processing corn to make high fructose corn syrup resulted in a much cheaper sugar product with, quote unquote, better flavor enhancement and a longer shelf life. This is extremely important. High fructose corn syrup also is more stable and more consistent in flavoring, especially in acidic foods and soft drinks. And as a result, high fructose corn syrup became the most popular sweetener of choice for the food industry. FYI, today in the United States, the average American, again, this is the average American, every adult, child, teenager, the average is we consume 60 pounds of sugar every year, and more than half, 40 pounds of that being high fructose corn syrup. Often people ask a question about high fructose corn syrup. Is it a genetically modified product? Because we don't see bioengineering label on a lot of products with high fructose corn syrup in them. Well, FYI, high fructose corn syrup is made from a genetically modified corn. The corn is first milled into corn starch, and then it's processed to create a syrup. But because the product, the end result, is a pure sugar and does not contain any DNA, and that's the key thing, it has no DNA in it, it does not have to be labeled as a genetically modified ingredient under the United States Department of Agriculture National Bioengineer Standards Disclosure Act. So that always comes up. Is it GMO? Yes, it's GMO. Why don't we know that? It's because there is no DNA in this product. So let me just remind ourselves that if we're eating everybody's eating 60 pounds of sugar a year, what that comes down to is between 17 and 22 teaspoons of sugar a day. That's more than double what the United States Department of Agriculture guidelines, their guidelines are don't eat more than 10 teaspoons a day. This is added sugar. This is not counting a banana, a peach, or an apple. These are added sugars. No more than 10 teaspoons a day, says the USDA. What does the American Heart Association say? Much lower. The American Heart Association says men, 9 teaspoons a day, women, 6 teaspoons a day. Wow. Okay, so quick question. If you've got a 12-ounce can of Coke, how many teaspoons are in the 12-ounce can of Coke? And now you have to do high-level math. This is the thing that kills me, because on the Coke, it's in grams. And you have to translate in your mind. I stopped math in, I think, 11th grade, maybe 12th. You know, I've got a PhD. I must be smart. How come I can't do that in my head? So it's 4 grams equals 1 teaspoon. That's a real down and dirty calculation. So a 12-ounce can of Coke has got about 10 teaspoons of added sugars. So there's your sugar for the day if you choose that beverage. So, but this is another way that we're kind of being led down the garden path. Think of it. How many times do you see when you're looking on labels, you're trying to be diligent, how many times do you see that it says the sugar in teaspoons? It doesn't. It gives us a percentage or it gives us grams. I'm sorry, that's too hard for me. And I am, you know, I got a lot of education, I'm overeducated, and I can't do it. And people who have no time can't be sitting around there pulling out, going in the aisles of the grocery store with their calculators, figuring out percentages of sugar when we're told that we're supposed to be avoiding sugar. So that's something that's one of my own personal peeves. Sorry. Thank you for letting me go on like that. There'll be a couple more, heads up. Trigger warning. So if we think about food, we had the McGovern report, the 70s. In the 70s, we had that research that says fat is bad. And then in the 2000s, we've got this research that sugar is bad. So when fat was bad, fat was taken out. But we still had the devil's food cookies, so something had to be in them. And what goes in them is modified starches and gums. And then when sugar was bad and sugar was taken out, we have these non-nutritive sweeteners. And then all things were supposed to be good because there's no sugar and there's no fat. But heart disease and diabetes continued to climb. So there must be something else going on. What is it? Well, this is one working hypothesis, that it has to do with ultra-processed food items. And in 2009, a team of nutrition scientists in Brazil, led by a nutrition scientist named Dr. Carlos Montaro, and Dr. Carlos Montaro had a big, huge population data set, and he was looking at health and health outcomes. And what he noticed, and his team noticed, that the people who were buying bottles of oil, lots of oil, bags of sugar, lots of sugar, boxes of salt, and taking them home and making food and having a traditional diet, had better health outcomes than the people who stated that they had less oil, less sugar, and less salt, but they were eating purchased, industrial-produced foods. And so this started his team investigating, well, if these people are eating industrial processed food, what's in those foods, and how can we look at this data to see why these people are having worse health outcomes than the people who are having traditionally purchased food items. And what he discovered, what he and his team put forward, is this NOVA system. So now I get to use my pointer again. All right, so the NOVA is a classification system that is now used throughout the world of nutrition, and you will see it in the popular press as well. It's a system of classification. So classification number one, NOVA number one, is minimally processed food. So that's an apple, an oyster, minimally processed food, also vegetables, legumes, milk. Included in this is also wheat and corn, flour, nuts. They're in NOVA 1. NOVA 2 is what's called culinary ingredients. So that would be butter, that would be sugar, that would be buttermilk, that would be vegetable oils. Iodized salt is in NOVA 2. So what's NOVA 3? NOVA 3 is, oh my gosh, my thing is just, I've already killed it. Oh my gosh. Would you pass that to John? So what NOVA 3 is, it's the addition of 1 and 2 together. Pickles. So NOVA 3 is processed food. But NOVA 3 is food that is recognizable from NOVA 1 or NOVA 2. So you can have traditionally made salamis and sausages. You can have, of course, your canned vegetables, dried, smoked fish and meat. Those are processed food, but they're in number 3, and they're recognized as food items that come from 1 and 2. So then we move into classification number 4. Thank you. Yes. Okay, so in number 4, we have industrial formulations. These are industrially formulated edible substances. So that's the idea we have to get in our head. It's not food like 1, 2, and 3. It's industrially processed edible substances. So they are not ingredients that you will find in a traditional kitchen or any household level tradition. They're using industrial processes, and they are engineered. That's the important word to remember. I mean, food engineering is a fantastically interesting field, and that is what food engineers do. They design foods that will have a long shelf life and that will be highly palatable, which means we want to eat them. And incidentally, they also are highly profitable. So that's what we have to think about in the ultra-processed food. Why are they highly profitable? Because they're very cheap to make. And so that's what we have to think about when we think about ultra-processed food. We don't want to say everything that's ultra-processed is bad and horrific, because, for example, infant formula would be classified as an ultra-processed food, and nobody wants to vilify infant formula. So we have to really be careful and think about what falls into this category and how what was engineered to make us eat and want to eat that food is affecting us. And here's an important fact. In 2019, the National Institutes of Health put out a study saying that 60% of Americans' diet, 60% of everything we eat, is ultra-processed food. And with children, that it was closer to 70%. Well, now in 2024, the nation as a whole, 70% of our food intake has caught up to the children's 70%. So 70% of what we eat is ultra-processed. So the question is, well, we don't really know much about that. So what's being done about it? And now we turn to another Senate committee. We had a Senate committee in the 1970s that looked at this. And last year in December, another Senate committee on health, education, labor, and pensions. And of course, Bernie Sanders chairs that committee. And they launched an investigative series of reports on the American food system. And as Senator Sanders said, this is what he said: 73% of our food supply, so not just what we're eating, but our food supply is ultra-processed food. And recent research, again, this is research within the past 5 years, shows that these substances, these industrially formulated edible substances can be as addictive as alcohol and almost as addictive as nicotine. Now, we know that there's a warning label on nicotine products. So this was Senator Sanders' point, that he was leading the public and the committee to consider. And the committee suggested measures like banning junk food in kids' TV programs. And the interesting thing also pointed out by this Senate committee is that we spend billions and billions and billions of dollars a year on health care. And the food and beverage industry spends $14 billion a year advertising and marketing their products, which are proving irresistible to the public, to the American consumer. And $2 billion is spent to market foods that are predominantly high in fat, saturated fat, sugar, and salt to kids. And the aim is that once the kid as a child is accustomed, habituated to that food item, that child will demand that food item in the center of the department store, and then that child will grow up and continue to consume that food. And then also coming out from this committee's finding is that teens and children watch about 4,000 food and beverage ads on TV a year, and kids who watch Nickelodeon or Nicktoons, they see more than 10 unhealthy food and beverage ads every hour of TV. So if we think about, not to vilify, but if we think about Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola spent $327 million last year on advertising. Okay, $327 million, Coca-Cola. And how much did they get in Profits? 9.5 billion. So that's a pretty good return on your investment in advertising. But not, and this is what Bernie Sanders said about that, not one of those advertisements for Coca-Cola will tell you that your chance of getting diabetes goes up 26% if you drink 1 or 2 cans of Coke a day over time. So the Senate committee suggested starting with ads, starting with children's programming, and this is not a radical idea. The United States National Institutes for Health has research showing that if we ban programming, advertising of unhealthy foods to kids, childhood obesity will go down by 18%. We have other examples across the world. In the 1980s, Quebec, the province of Quebec, banned junk food advertising to kids under the age of 13. And now the province of Quebec has the lowest level of childhood obesity in Canada. And not only that, they have the highest consumption of fruits and vegetables. And just this past summer, the World Health Organization has called for countries to ban and or substantially reduce, I love that, ban it or, okay, substantially reduce marketing to junk food to children. Norway has announced that it's going to enact this, so has Ireland, Portugal, South Korea, Spain, and Taiwan. So there's a whole growing body of evidence that this could be one tactic in this game plan of addressing problems of disease and lifelong health effects. We should also note that Mexico has taken it another step. In 2021, Mexico is now, we're the country with the largest number of obese and overweight people in the world. Number 2 used to be Great Britain, but now it's Mexico. So Mexico has overtaken Great Britain, and Great Britain has dropped down to 3. This is not really a race to the top, but it's, But in Mexico, Mexico has not only banned all cartoons on food products. So if you think of your serial cartoon heroes and tie-ins with TV shows on food products. In addition to that, that was in 2021. In addition to that, they have developed a warning label system, and the warning label system has to be on all products. This is warning labels to tell you that it's got a lot of calories, excessive sugar, excessive trans fats, excessive salt, excessive colorants, which are forbidden to young people, and has caffeine. So they have implemented this system of, let's call them alerts or warnings on processed food. Should be noted that this was also, similar attempts were tried in Ecuador, and the food industry complained, and then after a short period of about 5 years, this warning system was removed from the Ecuadorian food system. But remember, this is because so much of our diet now, 70% of what we eat, consists of foods and vegetables that are highly ultra-processed. So what do we mean by that? Oh, I get to use this again. Okay, so here we have Doritos. Here's a list of what is in Doritos. Now, I am not a chemist, and I actually am not a biologist. So I'm looking at this as kind of a layperson. And as a layperson, I know what corn is, I know what vegetable oil is. Well, okay, I kind of have to stop there because I don't know what maltodextrin is. So I stop and I look up, well, what's maltodextrin? Oh, it's what's this wonderful word called a bulking agent. The last thing in the world I want in my life is bulk. Yet I challenge you, look at your food and you will see maltodextrin. Now, bulking agent, why is it in there? It's in there because it's replacing fat. So, bulking agents are added, fat is taken out, bulking agents are put in. The FDA, the Food and Drug Agency, has said that maltodextrin is generally regarded as safe. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But interestingly enough, someone disagrees. Someone over there, the Cleveland Clinic, is very concerned with maltodextrin because in its research, it has found out that maltodextrin alters our gut bacteria, which they don't know what that results in, but it's been noted, and we're now awaiting the research on how does it alter our gut bacteria. So we have in here this long set of ingredients, including, of course, our colorants, our acids, lots of sugar, different kinds of sugar, and then we have stabilizers down at the bottom here with these names that are just simply too difficult to pronounce. But this is the example of an ultra-processed food. And the overall, this is again, I'm just going to ask you to come with me on this journey. The overall point of these processes is to create an item, an engineered item, that you cannot stop eating. Okay? Now, I'm going to challenge people you can do this at home. Gather your friends around the table. You could either make potato chips, take a potato, slice it very thinly, use oil or bake it, whichever, add some salt, and then take some Pringles, a can of Pringles. Pringles works best for this, but any kind of processed potato chips. And see how many of each, or buy a pack of potato chips that only has 3 ingredients. I mean, they're on the market. You can buy potato chips that have potatoes, oil, and salt. Buy them and buy the Pringle. Take the Pringle. Oh, here's a fact about Pringles that I just learned the other day. Pringles were engineered, again, the engineers, they are so smart. It is engineered to mimic the shape of your tongue so that you can put it on your tongue. I've always wondered why. I thought, wow, isn't that cool? No, it was planned like that. So it sits on your tongue and it dissolves. So you test it. You've got your bag of potatoes, Cons. I think, is it Cons? Do you have that up here? Cons potato chips, I think they're the 3 ingredient potato chips commercially available throughout the state. So you take that and you take the Pringles. Which one are you eating more? When does your brain tell you stop? Well, the brain is not going to tell you to stop with the Pringles until the entire can is finished. The other potatoes, your brain, your metabolism, your sensory perception will get tired of the taste of potatoes, because that is how our bodies have been programmed. You can eat a handful of them, sure, but then you get tired. It's called satiety. So your body reaches a point of satiety with products that are Nova 1 classification and Nova 2 and Nova 3. The other wonderful test that I do with this little potato experiment is I do it in our classroom setting with Doritos and with a type of corn chip. It's called shag bark. I don't know if they're available here. Shag bark corn chips. They're an Athens brand of corn chip, and they only have 5 ingredients. They're made from masa, so they have corn, water, and lime. They have oil, and they have salt. So I have the students. We can imagine a group of students. There's the Doritos, and there's the corn chips made from corn, oil, and salt. So which do the students prefer? Yeah, Doritos. Why don't they like the corn chips? They're biased? Oh, they are salty. Oh, that's interesting. Yes. You know what they say? They taste too much like corn. And I'm like, okay, it's a corn chip. So what do the Doritos taste like? And they say, oh, I don't know. They taste good. They taste spicy, they taste salty, but the other ones have lots of salt. So this is what the food engineering people are paid the very big bucks to do. They are paid to create a product that overrides our biological satiety switch. Because if you taste too much of one thing, you stop eating it. Anything. It's just the way the human is built. So food engineers, the holy trinity of food engineers is salt, sugar, and fat. You find the perfect point where people cannot stop eating. And that is what ultra-processed food is. So that was, I think, my last rant for today. But let's just think think in your own mind. Think about your food, what you buy, your habits, and just test this. Get people together and try this little test. With candy corn, I put this candy corn up, because I'm going to talk about it later too. But look, it doesn't have very many ingredients at all. We're coming into the fall season. There'll be a lot of candy corn around. I think we should remind ourselves what's in it. Let's just, I don't know, it doesn't like me, this thing. There you go. So keep an eye on the colors, and we're gonna talk about those in a minute or two. So we have this discussion of satiety. We have this discussion, we know that our food, we are eating and consuming this food up to 70% of our daily calories. And so what do we know? Well, the thing is, as I said, this is all new research. It is cutting edge research. We don't have all the answers. Let's be clear from the very beginning. Research has some evidence of some things, but we're still awaiting. We're still we are part of a tremendous experiment that I, for one, didn't sign up for. So we have to think about, what does the evidence show us? The evidence shows that type 2 diabetes is increasing, heart disease is increasing, obesity is increasing. What does it show us about these UPFs and their impact? Well, a recent study by the National Institutes of Health shows that there's not proof of causation, but there seems to be an association with depression, anxiety, and general feeling of mental unwellness in populations, adult populations, that people who reported, so again, this is the problem with nutrition studies. A lot of them are self-reported, and I don't always remember what I had for breakfast, let alone write it down and report it if I'm part of a scientific study. So this is a problem with nutrition studies. But individuals that self-report higher UPF are more likely to report mild depression and more mental anxiety, and zero, this I found interesting, 0 mentally healthy days. And this data is part of this growing body of information about UPFs. The figure in the bottom about higher consumption over time associated with the decline in global and executive function, that's from a 2022 study of 10,000 people in Brazil, headed by Carlos Montaro's team. And what they did is they did a follow-up, an 8-year study of people consuming UPF, with having UPF at least 20% of their diet, and they noted this greater decline in global and executive functioning. This global and executive functioning decline is also supported by a 2020 study on 72,000 people in the United Kingdom. The gold standard on UPF tests were by an American nutritional science called Kevin Hall through the National Institutes of Health. He has a new study coming out at the end of the year, but his 2019 study, he did the thing that's why nutrition testing is so difficult. He actually put people in a hospital setting. So he put 20 people in a hospital setting, he divided them in half. He had half eat as much as they want of ultra-processed food. They're in a hospital, they're watched all day long. And the other half ate only Nova 1, Nova 2, and Nova 3 foods. No limit on any groups of food. People could eat whatever they wanted. And what he was looking at, he had a whole battery of things that he was looking at, but he wanted to see, was there any change? And what he found is that the people who were eating ultra-processed foods were consuming 500 calories a day more. Now remember, the other people, no one's telling them to stop eating, their steak and their bacon and their brie on bread. Nobody's telling them to stop eating it. But they ate less than the people on the ultra-processed food diet. Now, these findings were so inexplicable to this nutrition scientist, Kevin Hall, that he has organized a new study with the research coming out at the end of this year to follow up on, well, what does that mean? Did he just get 10 people who were, again, very small studies, but highly controlled and gold standard in science? So there seems to be an association with depression, association with mental health impacts, negative mental health impacts. There is definitely a correlation with weight gain. And then there is this association with a decline in executive functioning. So the thing is there, wow, what are we going to do with this? And why? Why is this happening? Could it be our gut bacteria and fiber? That's what some people say. Could it be that these additives trick your brain and your body and your metabolism? This tricking of your body is one of the leading causes of the use of trying to ban the use of artificial sweeteners, because it seems that when you drink artificially sweetened products, you consume more than if you had a sweetened product. And the scientists have sort of figured out that maybe you're drinking more because your body thinks it's going to get sugar, and it doesn't get sugar, so it's trying to get the sugar. So you're drinking, but you're never going to get the sugar because the sugar isn't in the first place. It's a replica. It's a non-nutritive sweetener. So maybe the body's being tricked, and maybe the UPF, they are disrupting vascular health. That could be causing the heart disease. Maybe the UPF are displacing healthy nutrients. Maybe they're damaging brain cells. That would account for that headline on ultra-processed food and dementia that I showed on the first slide. But the problem is, we don't know. And this is one thing that I think as Americans we should be aware of, that the FDA, of course, all hail the FDA. The FDA keeps us safe, I would say, most of the time. Here's a loophole. This is called GRAS. It's generally recognized as safe. Every country in the world has a group that decides its own health and safety additives. So most countries test additives, food additives, before they let the food additives into the food system. They test the additive. They demand that the company that wants to put the additive in the food give them data showing that the additive is safe for human consumption. However, in the United States, we do it the other way around. We consider additives to be safe until they're not. And even better than that, companies only need to self-report that the additive is safe. So the FDA doesn't require the companies to provide data showing that the additive is safe. If the company testifies that the additive is safe, the FDA says, okay, use it. Now, that's why if you travel to Japan or you go to the European Union or to some other countries as well, China even, you will notice that the food contains different ingredients than the same formulations, the same food item in the United States. Because in the European Union, a number of these foods are banned. A number of these additives are banned. For example, titanium oxide is banned in the European Union. BVO, which is in just about every soft drink and many other products as well, the FDA is considering a ban on BVO, but BVO is already banned in the European Union and in Japan. Some companies, because of the EU and Japan and the UK, have voluntarily pulled BVO from their products. One example is PepsiCo. PepsiCo came to that decision because of the government regulation in the European Union and Japan. So this is a list of horrible things, but the most important thing that you need to remember is you should look for these things when you're buying your products. Please note that in the state of California has put in new regulations for food sold in the state of California to go into effect in 2027. And they are banning some of these items. They're trying to bring the state of California up to the standard of the European Union and Japan. They're on a pathway to do that. Because of this movement in California, the state of New York is also investigating similar bans on products. However, we should note that one of the things I don't have in here is our friend red dye number 3. I only like to put that in because for years ago, red dye number 3 was associated with hyperactivity in children. And based on that research and also the research on other health effects of red dye number 3, red dye number 3 was banned in the European Union and the UK and Japan. Oh, sorry, in the European Union, they let red dye number 3 color cocktail cherries. Their thinking is children don't eat cocktail cherries. So you still can find red dye number 3. Red dye number 3 has a very deleterious effect on the thyroid. It's linked to thyroid cancer and other hormonal disruptions. So you may have heard of the Skittle bans. The Skittle ban in California comes from this question of red dye number 3. They're not banning Skittles, state of California. They're banning red dye number 3. So this is just a little couple short, quick and dirty sheet of things that we have in our food system that other countries have decided, due to data, are not safe. As I said, the FDA has this category. You can look it up, grass, and it will tell you, give you a big, long list of everything that the FDA considers to be safe. So what are we supposed to do? Well, the food activist and author Michael Pollan says, we as individuals, we have to read labels. We already saw how difficult that is. We always talked about teaspoons and grams and all that nonsense. We have to cook. We really, really, really have to cook. Cook doesn't mean spending 18 hours making some gourmet food. Cook means using the Instapot and making a batch of beans, a batch of corn flour. It means using the appliances in a home kitchen to prepare meals eaten at home and to keep meals eaten outside the house as a splurge. And Michael Pollan also says, shop locally and eat locally. But I ask the question, is this all our responsibility, our individual responsibility? I mean, let's just look at this for a second and take a moment to think. Fast food. Fast food is the second, fast food industry, the fast food sector, is the second largest private employment sector in the United States of America. Number 1 is hospital systems. Okay? In the United States of America, how many people eat fast food every day? In millions. So how many millions? Give me a number. 100 million. You're close. Anybody else want to give me a number? 84 million people eat fast food every single day in the United States of America. 84 million people. And interestingly enough, I mean, from a sociological perspective, millennials sociologists are charting this. Millennials in the data seem to have a genuine emotional response with certain brands of fast foods and beverages. And the fast food companies and beverage companies, aware of this, of course, are using celebrities, music heroes, as spokespeople. We have the example of Travis Scott and his special quarter pounder deal. If you go to McDonald's, Travis Scott being the top 5 rappers in the world today. And when he made a deal with McDonald's for this special quarter pounder, they had 30% increase in sales in 1 week, okay? Because Travis Scott. I can be like Travis Scott. I'm eating what Travis Scott eats. Now, there's, not to dump on Travis Scott, because there's a number of other people. Taco Bell has its first chief impact officer in Lil Nas X, and he also has had a tremendous impact on sales, any product that he brands in Taco Bell. Now, the sociologists studying this phenomena have asked millennials, that's anybody really now under the age of 40, what is it that drives your purchase of a Lil Nas X Dorito Loco Taco? And what it is, it's become some form, eating fast food, branded fast food, under the connection with certain popular culture figures, is a form of civic participation. I almost fell over when I read that. Civic participation. I can be like you. I'm part of the group. So this is a real other slant. This is beyond what is a UPF. This goes into the penetration, really, of society. So we have to really think about this very hard. And we have to remember that, you know, childhood obesity tripled from 1995 to 2020. Tripled. And we're all going to be paying for that. And I don't really think it's just the fault of the individual. So the thing that I want people to leave with is some takeaways. The burden does come down to the individual on examining what you eat. We are the second generation, maybe third generation, the history of the world that has never thought about food. Your great-grandmothers, your grandmothers, they had to think about food. They had to think about where food came from. I saw those beautiful information banners in the hotel, and it described the founding of this community in 1873 as Hardscrabble County. And I thought, hardscrabble, that means it was hard to get food. Now, we don't think about food. Those people who came here, boy, did they have to think about food. They had to think about food all the time. My grandmother was born in Ireland. You know, she had a tough life. She had to think about food. I have never thought about food except, you know, well, I don't, that's not good. I want something more delicious. I mean, that's the only kind of thinking anyone in my generation has had to think about. This is a break in world history. So we need to understand that and wake ourselves up and examine what it is we're eating and think how we got here. So it does mean you have to read labels all the time. If you do one thing, read the label all the time. You can put in your phone a couple things you want to avoid. I mean, obviously you're not going to be able to avoid everything. Just choose one or two things. Start small. You have to start someplace. Our civic participation cannot be buying a quarter pounder because of Travis Scott. Our civic participation must be no more ads on TV that promote food that's going to make the kid unwell. We also have to cook at home. I know that takes an entire reordering. Here's the thing, I'm sure you have all noticed this. People, millennials, younger people, nobody knows how to cook. You know, nobody sells can openers anymore because cans don't have this. Everything's a pull top, tab top. Did you know that? Walmart, lots of places in the country does not sell can openers because nobody uses cans that need to be opened. I take students to Sicily, for example, and we do service activities where we cook with local church groups to make food for anyone who needs it. So I've got groups of 15 students of Ohio University's finest, and we're given knives and told to cut up fruit for fruit salad. You know, in the past 10 years I've been doing this, maybe 5 students know how to cut up an apple. Or they cannot cut up an orange. The church ladies, God love them, they help us, and they always say to me, "Now listen, lady, I'm not going to let them go near the onions because I know they're not going to know how to cut an onion." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, I have to now introduce another element in the curriculum, how to cut an onion." But it is a fact that we do not have these skills. Home ec, as you know, if you have grandchildren, does not exist. There was a decision made to remove home ec because of the cost and the idea that it didn't promote anything meaningful in the curriculum. That's baloney. I mean, we should have a home ec movement. Let's rebrand it. Home ec is needing to be rebranded as something else. It could be lifestyle skills or being an adult. But no one knows how to cook. And everyone can use an Instapot or an air fryer. And that is step one. Then we have something that many people are talking about, shareholder activism. And what that means is you have to look where your investments are, where your pension fund is. Is it going to the food engineers at PepsiCo and at Coca-Cola and at Archer Dan Midlands? Is it going to Tyson? Could you maybe be a little bit active and say, hey, I don't want, it's great that my money is being invested, but I don't like my healthcare costs. Don't you see a connection between those two? So stakeholder activism is the next wave in this food movement. This and also class action litigation, which is coming just like big tobacco. We thought big tobacco was bad. Wait till big food is on our way. There's going to be a slew of lawsuits on the part of class action citizens who did not sign up to be an experiment. The companies will do what makes them money. You know, nobody's saying they're bad. They do what makes them money. They have to stop making money for me to pay my health bills, for me to get diabetes. The next thing is regulation, citizen action. As I said, Bernie Sanders is starting this. There'll be a lot going on. The basic things is other companies have to show data that says the additive is safe. Wow, my God, is that earth-shattering? Hardly. If Pepsi-Cola has to do it for the European Union, why don't they do the same thing here? Hey, what's us? How come I get the the fuzzy end of the lollipop or whatever that was? So this is what we have to start examining. We have to find a way to be in control of our food environment. And it's not going to happen all at once. It has to happen one label at a time. So I went on for long enough. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm happy to try to address any questions. No, what did I do last night? What's the name of the company? Toffs. 100 years of making ice cream? I'm going to go and have their ice cream. It's delicious.
The other thing I've noticed, my grandson's daughter was here a few weeks ago, and he wanted Fruity Pebbles for his breakfast, which is probably one of the god-awfulest thing you could ever eat. But I found there's leftovers, and I've found out that that's really good on vanilla ice cream. It's actually better than chocolate syrup. So I'm using up the rest of his there's chocolate pebbles on my vanilla ice cream. But
yeah, that's why the food engineers are making $250,000 a year. That's their salary, starting $250,000 a year to be a food engineer. And you're the proof of the pudding. But ice cream is Nova, ice cream like that is Nova number 3 because it's the combination of real food, milk and cream and strawberries and sugar, and you make ice cream.
except for the one
Oh, that's a new trend. Yeah, the candy is the problem. Now, you can make candy. I mean, Girl Scout projects pulling taffy and making chocolate, boy, that was hard. That makes me not eat a lot of candy if I have to make the candy, right? So, yes, ice cream is nobody wants a world without ice cream. I want a world with ice cream with 4 ingredients, maybe 5. I do not want ice cream that has 15 ingredients that are stabilizers, that are a number of 3 or 4 different kinds of invert sugars. I don't want that ice cream. So, and Fruity Pebbles. Yeah, chocolate Pebbles. You've just, that's music to every food engineer's. That's what they did. They found salt, fat, and sugar. They found the absolute delicious point. You don't taste, you keep eating.
A lot of the vegans and vegetarians are eating this fake meat. I just can't imagine that it's anything but ultra processed.
So it is. So you touch on a very delicate issue in the world of changing our diets. The Impossible Burger is impossible to make in a kitchen. So it is ultra processed. And many of those meat substitutes are ultra processed food. And no, they are not a product that's going to change the dynamic in our food system. But a burger made from black beans and beets with maybe some nutritional yeast, there's a vegan burger. Vegans, the classic thing about vegans is, they live on French fries. Well, French fries using hydrogenated trans fat oils, that's not good. So vegan is fantastic if you're a vegan who is using 1, 2, or 3, Nova 1, Nova 2, and Nova 3. Vegans that are relying on ultra-processed foods, that causes the same amount of health concerns as any kind of omnivore in the world. So again, it comes to reading the ingredients. It's we want to encourage more meat substitutes. But processing in a factory might not be sustainable because those processes have not been totally tested. I mean, why does it have to bleed red? I mean, that's Impossible Burger's thing. It bleeds red. Well, why? I know it's not meat. I deliberately chose it because it's not meat. So, again, it's this tricking where we're not waking up. That's my point with that. So that's a good question. There you go.
I'm not sure I'm going to ask this right, but we've been talking about all the money everybody's making on that bliss point and making us eat and gaining weight and getting unhealthy. Now we have the pharmaceutical company developing drugs so our body doesn't think that we need that, so they can make money on it too. And I'm wondering about your opinion.
I can't believe you asked that because that very question prompted me to apply to do another degree. I mean, I have a master's, I have a PhD, to do another master's in health because I find it to be shocking to some level I can't even process. What does it mean? And these are drugs you'll have to take for the rest of your life. And we don't know what the long-term effects are. So how can we all be signing up for it without the knowledge? And I read the other day that, I think it's so there's Ozempic, which is for diabetes, and Wegovy, for weight control. So Wegovy is something like $1,500 or $1,800 a month in the United States if your insurance will pay for it, and it's $69 in the European Union, $99 in the UK a month. Now, that's got to tell you, this is not about health. This is not about weight control. This is about profit sharing. Norway, because it's Novo Nordisk is Norwegian, or is it whatever country it is? They have more money. They don't even know what to do with the money. The company has been shocked, overwhelmed by money. So they are life-saving drugs. There is something wrong with the amount Americans pay. We should be looking at that, and there needs to be a lot more research. But really, I have been so flabbergasted. I've seen people whose lives have been transformed with diabetes off of, just amazing transformations. They've signed up for something they didn't really understand the whole of my life, right? So that's right on. Research and discussion. We don't discuss this. How come in the UK, you're paying $99 a month for something, I can't remember what it is in Canada, but it's also extraordinarily cheap in Canada. Why do we have to pay this premium? What, does ours come in a nicer package, a prettier pen? So I don't know, that's a great question. You should be writing to every elected official and say, what the heck is going on? And then to every research institute, National Institute of Health, this should be number one.
In the studies that were in Washington, is there a number of how much money is spent lobbying in Washington? Is there a number of how much money is spent lobbying in Washington?
Oh.
Because I bring that up because I remember when processed cheese food had 3 ingredients, and now it's not even cheese in it. So somebody's changing the rules, and how much money is being spent to change the rules?
Yeah, so that's, I'm sorry I forgot, I didn't address that. That's a great question. Lobbying, the food industry lobbying, in fact, I deal with this in my afternoon presentation. The food industry lobbies is bigger than the defense industry lobby, which gives you an idea of scale. And I don't know the number offhand. It's actually in my other presentation, but it is astonishing. I think in the last election cycle, the food lobbies spent in 2022 something of the order of 100, okay. So in the last election cycle, 2020, not 2022, food companies spent $200 million on political donations. So that's just one event, one cycle, and that's why food consolidation is impacting us as consumers. It's taking away choice, and it's promoting big business over the health and safety of the individual consumer. Yeah, that's a very good point. Yes.
Good presentation. Very,
thank you.
Very eye-opening for me. It's my understanding, and I could be wrong, do you know this for a fact, that food stamps, the SNAP program, they can buy Doritos, potato chips, Coca-Cola, Pepsi with their SNAP card?
Yes.
That's fact.
Yes. So, and that's a very, well, can you imagine who lobbied for that? So that's a very dicey issue. Originally, supplemental food, supplemental nutrition assistance program. That's SNAP. Supplemental nutrition assistance program, SNAP. Because SNAP was originally designed to be supplemental. However, nowadays, because of our skewing of the food system, many people have to survive on SNAP. The schedule of items that go into SNAP, they were heavily lobbied. They were heavily lobbied, and the other side of the coin said, look, if you don't let people have free choice, you are demonizing their food choice, and that is ethically and morally wrong. So, between a rock, the money from the lobbying, the hard spot, ethical and moral strictures, eat this, don't eat that. Because then the question comes, well, should you be able to buy steak? Right, remember all this discussion. Should you be able to buy halibut? Why not just cans of tuna? That starts to undo the whole shebang. So that's why the SNAP benefit, which, is a joke. SNAP is not supplemental. It is what people live on. And we know, okay, where do people, sorry, you got me on another topic, but SNAP, more than 33% of the employees, and I'm just going to pick on Walmart, 33% of people who work at Walmart receive SNAP benefits. Where do they spend those SNAP benefits? At Walmart. Do you think Walmart has any interest in raising those people's salary so that they're going to get off SNAP benefits? No, because they get something, I can't remember, I know it's over $18 billion in SNAP funding a year, and the SNAP regulations do not require disclosure. That's been a fight recently in Congress that Kroger, Albertsons, they're going to merge. They're requesting merger. Walmart. We, as a taxpayer, I think, should know where those SNAP benefits go. I'm not talking about the individual. I'm talking who benefits from SNAP. Well, Walmart benefits from SNAP. Now, obviously, people have to buy groceries somewhere. And I don't know about your farmers markets, but in Athens, Ohio, our farmers markets take SNAP benefits. But you have to have a car, and it's only on Saturday mornings to get to the farmers market. But the farmers market you have SNAP, and if you have SNAP and you buy fruits and vegetables, you get a $1 plus. You get 10% more. So there are ways to incentivize SNAP benefits so that you buy fruits and vegetables, but you see the conundrum of controlling the list of products. Because of elderly population on SNAP, SNAP rulings had to be adapted to allow to pay for hot food, because it turned out that many seniors on SNAP would purchase in a grocery store. You think of the buffets, at the grocery store, they would purchase hot food because they didn't have the equipment at home to make it, whatever. SNAP previously did not allow that, but then SNAP had to take this reality into effect. So SNAP, FYI, what funds SNAP? Taxpayers. In what piece of legislation? What is it? The Farm Bill. What bill is right now Up for discussion. And who's the Ohio senator on the Farm Bill? Senator Sherrod Brown. Sherrod Brown. Sherrod Brown is one of the most informed agriculture experts in the United States Senate. The other one would be Tim Ryan. I think I lost to J.D. Vance. But the Farm Bill is where the SNAP bill, the SNAP funding is. So the Farm Bill is re-upped, re-approved every 5 years. But it's always such a fight that it doesn't happen every 5 years. It happens every 6 or 7 years. And right now there is a huge fight over the Farm Bill and over SNAP, over work requirements, over things like what you're saying with regard to SNAP. So it's a hot potato right now, aside from all the other hot potatoes in our political life right now.
So I have a question about the food pyramid. I don't know if it's even taught in elementary, middle school, or anywhere, but my understanding was when it was developed, it was also highly influenced by agriculture or farm or whoever was in the business to influence that. They've changed it recently, but I don't know, is that even still in use or does it even make a difference?
So you bring up a very interesting point. The food pyramid is out. The food pyramid was replaced by what was called My Plate, because the pyramid was viewed as something like weird. I'm not going to Egypt, so what's this got to do with what I'm eating? And the idea that on the plate you could see your meat, your vegetable, whatever. Okay, so there's your plate. And 2011 was when President Obama had a big influence in food safety. He pushed through with in his his legislative agenda, something called the Food Modernization Act. The Food Modernization Act, which was never fully funded, but it was a piece of legislation sitting out there, had in it this My Plate. So My Plate is what we're supposed to look at nowadays. But you put your finger right on the heart of the issue, because My Plate has a glass right next to it. What's in that glass? Milk. Why? The dairy lobby. So Harvard University, the Chan Institute for Health, very leaders in the field of nutrition, they did a My Plate with a glass. And what's in their glass? Water. But the United States Department of Agriculture could not put a glass of water because who asked the question about lobbying? Yes, about lobbying of the dairy industry. So it has, it's basically like the food pyramid. When I said that the average American doesn't eat there's many fruit and vegetables and leafy greens, there's more leafy greens. Under the protein section, there's a whole long list that includes, tofu and beans and tempeh and other things that were not in the food pyramid. But the plate still has the milk because of the dairy lobby. But you shouldn't drink milk, just drink water. And ice cream. Make the milk, put the milk in ice cream.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Thank you.
Thank you.